Hi everyone, welcome back to the channel. Thank you as always for tuning back in. If you're new here, welcome. I'm Layla, the Lenormand reader, and I am one of the few people who focuses almost exclusively on the Lenormand practice. So be sure to check out all of the resources that I have for you. Everything is linked in the description box. So welcome to this new tutorial. This tutorial builds on the series of the mute cards that I started a few weeks ago. And today's mute card is the tree. Now just to backtrack a little bit, based on a survey I did a while back, we came out with the top 5 mute cards, and they are the lily, the tower, the tree, and then the moon and the mountain. So we did the lily and the tower in a couple of videos. I'm going to link them for you, and today we are doing the tree. So I like to start with looking at the Red Owl quote, and the Red Owl deck is one of the oldest deck we supposedly have for Lenormand, and it's specifically has a quote that is associated with every card, whereas the Blue Owl deck has a pip card. So the quote for the tree says this: "Pray for a tree that's far away, in good health you'll always stay. A group of trees can nicely mean, towards fulfillment your wishes lean." Now, just a note about this "that's far away" aspect that we see here in the quote. The quotes in the Red Owl deck often allude to how close or how far a card is relative to a significator in a grand tableau. And I do have this in mind to cover it in a future workshop. Be sure to tune into this. But we don't have to always look at whether a tree or the tree card or any card is close or far to a significator, because we're not always doing a grand tableau. But it's interesting that the card quote is alluding to health. So it says, if it's far away, in good health you'll stay. And if it's a group of trees, it can point towards fulfillment. So that's where the tree can take on a few different meanings. It is one of the cards that can refer to health. It can also point to wish fulfillment. Now, in general, a lot of people read the tree as pointing to health in general, and so it can be affected by nearby cards suggesting good health or bad health. It can also point to wishes materializing, and certainly Titania sees the card in this way. So the tree is one of those cards that can take on a few different nuances, and I can see why it is one of the mute cards, because it's not clear how it should be read. But as with other cards, it's okay for a card to take on different meanings, and you decide what meaning it takes on based on the context of the question, and also in combination with other cards that figure around it in a layout and not necessarily a tableau. Let's find out what other authors might think of the tree. I like to focus on Caitlin Matthews and Rana the most, but there are other authors that you could be inspired by. So I'm going to read off my phone. I've got here the handbook by Caitlin Matthews looking at her understanding of the card. She suggests that the tree stands for health and well-being, growth, and even life itself. I have to agree with this. The tree has a spiritual aspect. It's not just physical well-being. And it is associated in many traditions with a lot of wisdom, a lot of spirituality. Case in point is the tree of life. Now, obviously, this is from the Garden of Eden, and it's also the Kabbalistic tree of life. And on this note, I do have an upcoming workshop about life mapping layouts. And one of them is actually going to be the Kabbalah. And we're going to take this and apply it to a divination practice. So that is going to be really exciting. I've got the links for you on this. I hope you'll join me on this exciting workshop. And she says it's not a card you want to see in the vicinity of the mice or coffin. So again, this idea of combinations and the fact that the tree can be influenced by challenging cards like the mice or coffin, because that would, according to Caitlin Matthews, diminish vitality. She says also it can mean the beginning of a downturn in health if we've got the tree and mice, or a serious health condition with the tree and coffin. And because the tree can also stand for long lasting or something long lasting, I think that's a typo, it can represent memory in systems like seeds, blueprints, and DNA. Now, this is a really interesting take on the tree. I resonate with it, although I don't see this interpretation of the tree come up frequently in readings. But because the tree is associated with your family tree, it's associated with roots. And so this is where this idea of DNA and blueprints can come through. Now, also, she says the tree can be associated with boredom, ennui, and extended time. The tree is a slower card. I think it is also good with taking time out. But certainly with certain cards, I would see it as pointing to boredom. Maybe the mice, maybe the coffin. Looking at some keywords that Caitlin Matthews associates with the tree, she says the effect is neutral. Nouns, as you might know, Caitlin Matthews has a breakdown of nouns, adjectives, and verbs with each card. Like she has this very literal grammar that she applies to the cards. She says, in terms of a noun, patience, DNA, well-being, blueprint, ancestral memory. I like this ancestral element that she brings into the picture. You might know that Caitlin Matthews is an author in Celtic topics, and she's very well read and very well written in these topics. I do have links for Caitlin Matthews, of course, all of it in the description box, because she's one of those amazing authors. And in terms of adjectives, slowly, boring, long-lasting, healthy, genetic, living. So ideas that we can easily associate with the tree. You can see how it's, how we associate health and well-being, longevity, and these ideas. So I think it's pretty straightforward. And that's actually how you can make sense of the cards. You start with some basic keywords and then you branch out from there. It gives you ideas into more ideas, and that's very much how you make sense of the cards. Just picking up a couple of combinations that I have here. The tree and fox. She says lying about your health, a misdiagnosis, deceptive health. That's interesting. I feel it's a bit strong with the fox and tree, but she certainly sees it this way. The tree and stars, shamanism, wisdom of ancestors, a clean bill of health. Now that's a really interesting take on the cards. Again, bringing in this element of spirituality. Moving on to Rana George. Rana George says this card usually features a beautiful lush tree, so a description of the card. She says the tree concerns all health matters, spiritual, mental, and physical. And I agree with this very much, focusing on this holistic approach to health, the sense of well-being and not just physical health. She also says it is our vital energy, our roots, our evolution, as well as the cycle of regeneration. So very beautiful ideas that make perfect sense with the tree. The tree card also represents maturity over time. So again, it's really hard to miss the idea that the tree is a card of longevity. And of course, a tree takes a long time to grow and build. And that sense of strength and solidity that it brings, it is associated with a slower energy. She says also, in a specific way, the tree evokes shamanic, tribal, and aboriginal spirituality, as well as Eastern meditation techniques and an Om factor. So again, it's really hard to miss how all sorts of traditions associate wisdom with the trees. And I think that is true across the board in the world, past and present. And there is a strong sense of spirituality that attaches to the tree. That's why I feel that it goes beyond health, and it does point to well-being in a general sense and to other things like longevity, wisdom, the sense of strength and rootedness. So moving on to a few keywords here that Rana George calls contextual meanings, and these are what I call correspondences. So in terms of the future, or I would say in a general reading, it points to, let's take some examples, connecting with certain people or to your roots, nourishing, reaching out, and branching out. So again, all sorts of actions that you can easily associate with the action of a tree. Making roots or creating a strong foundation. It's hard to miss how centered and strongly rooted a tree is. In terms of characteristics that would qualify the woman or the man. So these are what I call personality correspondences. She says a grounded, enlightened person, a spiritual teacher or a light worker, someone religious, healthy, balanced individual. So again, these two aspects that seem to stand out the most with the tree: an element of wisdom and spirituality on the one hand, and a sense of health and well-being on the other hand. So you can see it's pretty clear. It's not that confusing of a card. Let's see, in terms of work, Rana George suggests branching out, creating a strong foundation, slow and steady progress. Makes perfect sense with the tree. She says any type of medicine, pharmacies, pharmaceutical industry, healthcare. Again, this element of health that is associated with the tree. So as you can see, there is a general agreement around what the tree means. It seems to come out to be two main aspects here. There is a sense of health and there is a sense of spirituality. And I align very much with these ideas. I also think the idea of slowness and taking time out really comes with the tree. I like to see it as taking a step back for perspective. So again, this tunes into this element of wisdom and calm that is associated with the tree. And I do see it as having to do with health and well-being, but in general, I tend to feel that the tree is very positive. So whereas, like we read, some authors like Caitlin Matthews suggest that the tree can be influenced by negative cards, I tend to feel that the tree can help overcome the challenges brought by something like the mouse, for example, and the whip, possibly, not to a very great extent. Again, this depends on the nuances of the cards, like how challenging or how positive a card is. It is a gradient. It is not black and white. And so the impact of the tree is also influenced by that. But I like to think of the tree as helping us overcome challenges because it is so strongly rooted, because it has a strength and a wisdom and a sense of perspective that it brings to the table. So with this said, let's go ahead and look at how the tree might combine with some cards. Like I've done this in the other videos and I think it is helpful. We're going to go through the whole deck in like a brief way. And of course my card combinations master covers these combinations with a lot more detail. So here is the tree and child. That would point to seeds, growing seeds, something that is about to grow. The tree and book, I feel, has to do with knowledge and wisdom and possibly the mysteries. The tree and mouse points to overcoming challenges, possibly challenging health, like Caitlin Matthews suggests. The fox and tree, I think, points to a sense of cleverness and being tactical and strategic. You know, I think that the tree helps to bring out the clever aspects of the fox. But recall, Caitlin Matthews suggested lying about your health or that something is not transparent. And that too is possible given more context. The woman and tree can point to a supportive person, a wise person. It can also suggest that a relationship unfolds with a person. The fish and tree is great for money. Here we're looking at financial security and foundations. The moon and tree can be quite spiritual. This can point to intuition and things like that, but there is also that gradual element, that's that idea of phases and things taking their time. The letter and tree suggests good news, I would say, or something that grows into something pretty good. The ship and tree can also point to evolution, growth, and adventures. There can be a bit of an opposite energy here because the tree is unmoving, whereas the ship is moving. So perhaps given context, there can be a hesitation between staying and leaving, which would be the case certainly with the anchor and ship. The anchor and tree, very strongly rooted, sticking with what we're doing, being strong in our foundation where we stand. The house and tree is very much about growth and well-being, domestic well-being, but also a bit like with the anchor, this idea of staying put. The lily and tree can point to health as well. The lily is another one of those cards that I feel can represent the idea of health. The thing with the tree is that it can bring this element out, but I would say in this sense, the cards are a bit neutral. I would want more suggestions. But the lily is also the card of life path and career, and clearly with the tree, things are evolving and also probably on the right track. They're both very slow cards, and this idea of the lifelong path can be suggested here, and certainly it is a slower energy that points to patience and the need to to go through the steps and to evolve and grow and become more mature in the process. With the man, it's just like we read with the woman, points to a relationship here that is unfolding, or the tree characterizes the man as someone spiritual or wise and supportive. The rider and tree can point to progress and achieving goals. It's a bit like with the letter because the rider is a messenger card. But I also think this can be someone helpful, even if not in a very fast or in a hurry. It can be a supportive person. The stork and tree, I typically take this to mean growth and a promotion. I feel like it's a step up, the next step in evolution. The coffin and tree, this can definitely point to boredom and much slower energies. It can be a time when not much is happening. It can be an uneventful phase. It can also be like things stalling and not evolving, not growing. The scythe and tree, I almost always take to suggest uprooting. So you can imagine the action in a pretty straightforward way where the scythe digs out the roots and removes them. There aren't many cards that would suggest this with the tree, so I do think it's a valuable addition to our vocabulary. The tower and tree, also taking time, the long term, the life path, a bit like with the lily, could be happening here. Can point to the past, and where the idea of the roots and the family roots can be more highlighted when the tower comes in with the tree. I think this too is a valuable combination. The ring and tree, this is very good for relationships. These are strong commitments, lifetime partnerships, possibly past life partnerships. Interesting. The key and tree is one of those special combinations that I inherit from Titania's cards. It suggests achieving some very important goals, and it's certainly great for insight, enlightenment, and knowledge. The clouds and tree can mean thinking about things, taking time out to consider options. The clouds is typically challenging, so it can suggest that we need to take time out and to consider different opinions. The snake and tree would be a direct representation of the Garden of Eden and, this metaphor. I do think that the tree helps bring out the wisdom of the snake. That's my feeling. But like Caitlin Matthews might suggest, it can point to someone tricky, someone lying about health and things like that. That too is possible. It's not my interpretation. I can't really visualize the cards to mean this, but it is a possibility. The cross and tree is another one of those spiritual combinations, I feel. This can be matters of destiny, things that are meant to be, but also important decisions, where the tree asks you to take time out to consider, and assess the situation. The bird and tree can be a supportive conversation. The bird can be a bit of a stressful card, anxious, a bit chattery and things like that, but the tree, I think, helps tone it down. The garden and tree is very beautiful for all things nature, outdoors, greenery, and things like that. So it could be a good time to go for a hike, for example, or enjoy some fresh air. And in terms of the garden representing people and community, the tree can suggest taking root within a certain environment and feeling that you're part of it. The bear and tree is another one of those empowering combinations. There is that sense of growth and evolution. And with the sun, it is a beautiful combination for all-around well-being and healing, I feel. With the whip, there can be challenges here. Obviously, the whip is very strong in the challenging aspect, but the tree, I do feel, helps temper it. The mountain and tree can be going away somewhere far, taking time out. There can be a blockage element that needs to be sorted out, but I don't feel it blocks in the same way as the coffin. I think the mountain brings in a bit more, the idea of seeking answers, going away to find out or to take time out for perspective. The star and tree, beautiful for healing, a bit like with the sun. I think same thing with the flowers. Also that element of nature and greenery that people associate with these cards come through. With the dog, this is a friendship element here. So friends, developing relationships, supportive people. With the heart, it's a lovely combination suggesting maybe heart health, but also well-being and happiness, and I think in an inner way because of the spiritual aspect of the tree. With the road, this is the path ahead. So again, a bit like with the lily, the unfolding, the steps that we're taking, the growth and evolution. And with the clover here, beautiful element of greenery, well-being, and all around luck and healing and success. So as you can see, the tree is not so complicated to read. It is maybe not as clear-cut as some other cards, but really it's not complicated to make sense of it, not on its own, not in combinations. You don't have to have a perfectly nailed meaning for every card. You do want to allow for some flexibility with the cards, and I think we see this rather well with the tree. So these are my thoughts about the tree. I certainly look forward to your feedback. I certainly hope this was a helpful overview of the tree. Leave me your thoughts, your comments. Let me know how you read the tree, how you like the combinations that I read. If you have other ideas, it'd be wonderful if you can share them with me and others as well. So thank you for tuning in, and stay tuned for the next tutorial video, whether it is on a mute card or another topic. As always, thank you for watching, and take very good care of yourself.